What's going on, everybody? Jay here. Today I want to talk to you about the 16-bit era of games, that point in time where so many of us went from being people that played games to being a gamer. There were so many consoles that launched during this time that were so impactful and influential, whether it was the TurboGrafx 16, the Super Nintendo, or the one I want to talk to you about today, the Genesis. While a lot of my gaming history comes from playing the Super Nintendo, my Genesis was actually my first 16-bit console, and you never forget your first love. Today I want to look back at 5 games that impacted who I was as a kid and influenced me to this day, and some of the games I still play. Let's jump on in. Alright, so starting off with one of my absolute favorite games from when I was a kid on the Genesis, this is Comix Zone. This game released in 1995. Now, this came out when I was 16 years old, and as you know, I am a huge fan of comics and have been my whole life. If you missed the video where I talked about some superhero games you may have missed, the link is in the card above. Do check it out. But this game was a comic book come to life. You play as Sketch Turner, a comic book artist and freelance rock musician, which I thought all rock musicians were freelance, but hey, what do I know? I'm not a musician, I couldn't tell you. And basically what happens is, like any good superhero origin story, you're zapped by a bolt of lightning and you're sucked into the panels of your comic book that you're working on, the aforementioned Comix Zone. This game's great. It is a beat-em-up, so, you know, on a system that had a ton of beat-em-ups, it's hard to make a mark, but Comix Zone did that. The ability to choose your own path by jumping through the different panels or breaking through the panel barriers was amazing to me and blew my mind as a kid. I love Comix Zone. It is one of the best games released for the Genesis, and it is absolutely something that when I look back on that system, Comix Zone sticks out as one of those keystone games that are just signature Genesis. Discovering hockey was one of the most important parts of my life and my childhood. It is something that I adore to this day, and the NHL series is key in that development and that adoration of the sport. NHL 94 in particular is one of the most important games of my childhood. I have probably played more hours of this than any other game. I'm talking thousands upon thousands of hours. This was the default game that I put into my Genesis when I was a kid. I love everything about this game, and it is still the standard bearer that I use to compare other hockey games to. So when I play something new from EA, or if I played something older like Mutant League Hockey or any of the NHL 2K games, it was always, well, this isn't good enough. This doesn't feel like NHL 94. It doesn't feel like hockey should feel. And still to this day, that's the way it is. I love everything about this game. The camera angle is something that is still used by Electronic Arts to this day. There are just signature hits and moves. Goalies were smarter in this game than they were in previous versions. And yeah, it's my favorite. Yeah, there's definitely some bells and whistles missing from stuff that you're going to get later on down the line in the series. But still, this one is the best. So what happens when you take some funky music, some great visuals, just probably a few drugs, and just mix them all up into a great video game? You get Toe Jam and Earl, one of my favorite memories as a kid. Now, this game is something that you guys have experienced the influence of to this day. How often do I talk about my adoration of roguelike games? This is where that came from. The original programmer of Toe Jam and Earl had been inspired by the game Rogue when he was in college and wanted to make his own version of it, and what a version it is! This is just such a great game. I loved playing this game as a kid. I thought the music was incredible, and it still is. I thought the visuals were great, and the gameplay is simple. All you're doing is going around and trying to reassemble your ship. Of course, there's enemies everywhere, and you have to, not die and not get eaten by sharks or killed by bees, but still, it's a fun game. My most important memory of this, though, as a kid, was playing this game with my mom. We used to play this game for hours on end, and it was a memory that I will always treasure and something that we shared together. And yeah, it's just one of those feel-good memories from being a kid of playing a game with your parents. Thank you, Mom. I appreciate you, and I love you. Now, I'm not really sure how I did this, but when I was a kid, I actually somehow managed to talk my grandmother, who I was living with at the time, into giving me a Blockbuster membership. I think I asked for it for my birthday or something like that, and she saw no harm in it. Sure, you can have a Blockbuster membership. Little did she know I would save my lunch money every day and go to Blockbuster and rent video games on the weekends because that's what I wanted to do. And this was one of the games that I rented repeatedly. Road Rash 2 is incredible. It is one of the most simple concepts imaginable. You are on a motorcycle, and you can punch and kick your opponents to knock them out, and it's a race to victory. That's it. That's the entire game, but it's so much fun. It's fast. Like, what if you guys watched my last eShop video? I talked about how fast Horizon Chase Turbo felt. That's this game. Road Rash feels so fast and is so ridiculously fun. Yeah, I look back at it now, and if my grandmother knew that I was renting vehicular combat games where I was able to, like, beat the holy hell out of other motorcycle riders, she probably would have been a little bit upset, but hey, I had fun. Aside from hockey, pro wrestling was my favorite thing as a kid, and this game here, WWF Wrestlemania, the arcade game, was something that I just had so much fun with. Now, this is not, looking back at it now, a terribly great game, and it's certainly not deep, but it is a ton of fun. I particularly loved it because I could play as my two favorite wrestlers, Bret the Hitman Hart and Razor Ramon, and I could go after the belt. And it's over the top, it's cartoony, like Razor Ramon's arms turn into razor blades. You know, when you punch guys, bits of their ephemera will pop off them, like Razor loses gold chains and stuff like that. Bret Hart has hearts and skulls and stuff pop off. It's a silly game, and yeah, it's not something that you need to play very long now. Like, as an adult, I was playing this to capture the footage. I was like, wow, I was a very easily amused child, because this is not a great game. But I just look at it, and I remember the good memories of it. This is something that my friend Dave and I used to play a bunch. We regularly got beat up by Yokozuna, but that's okay. We used to sit on the floor of my grandparents' living room and play this game. It's, yeah, just great memories and great experiences of playing this game as a kid. I loved WWF Wrestlemania, the arcade game. Alright guys, there you have it. 5 games that I really adored as a kid, that impacted who I was then and influenced me to this day. If you look at things like Toe Jam and Earl, I had mentioned I played that with my mom, and it's something I share now with my kid with Toe Jam and Earl Back in the Groove. I still play the NHL series, and I still play the WWE and WWF games. And man, would I love to be able to play a new incarnation of Road Rash or Comic Zone. But now I want to hear from you. So many of us started playing in the 16-bit generation on the Sega Genesis. Let me know in the comments down below, what was that touchstone game that influenced you and still influences you to this day? If you enjoyed the video, please do consider giving it a thumbs up. And while you're here, if you haven't already subscribed, please do consider doing so. We're putting out 2 videos a week, and we'd love to have you here along for the ride. Until next time, guys, I have been Jay. Play more games, stay square, and we'll talk to you soon.